So today, I'm going to continue working on Chapter 3. You will need to print out worksheet number 1. That's under your lecture notes. And so that's what I'm looking at today. All right, so that's the first problem. Let me remind you that in order to get credit for watching the lecture, you do have to go and complete an assignment that's called lecture. I went through the grades and still I'm seeing that at least 10 of you are still not doing that. So let me remind you that when you are on My Stat Lab, you have to go to homework after you're done watching the lecture. You have to go to homework, and then there are these assignments. They're lecture 1, lecture 2, lecture 3. So today's our 5th lecture. So in order to get credit for watching the lecture, you have to go ahead and complete lecture 5. Chapter 3, part 3 is what we're doing. So there's 3 parts to this. And so the questions today are coming from this worksheet. So the questions you have to answer on here are coming from the worksheet. And so the way that I organize it, it says from question 16 during lecture, find the IQR for the number of hours males slept. So this is when I talk about whatever question it is, it's referring to that worksheet. All right, so here's question 4. So I'm referring to the worksheet that we're looking at. So that's where your questions are coming from today. Again, in order to get credit for watching the lecture, you do have to go to homework and then select the appropriate lecture. We are lecture 5. This is lecture 5 of the semester. Okay, so this is the first thing. You should be able to look at a frequency table and obtain the measures of center. Okay, now a frequency table represents grouped data. Notice that we don't actually know how many 2s, how many 5s, how many 10s we have in our data. It's already been grouped for us. So between 0 and 99, we know we have 22 data values between 0 and 99, including 0 and 99. Now, this table represents results from a survey that I sent you. And this is actually from a previous semester, but the results are usually similar. And what I do is the survey that I sent you for the current semester, I use that for my exams. So the exam questions that I get are going to be from the survey. So you'll see your results on the midterm when you take it. So I can give you a frequency table just like this one, and I can ask you to find the mean. Remember that we have different formulas that we use when we have group data versus the formulas that we use when we have raw data. And towards the end of this worksheet, I gave you an example of what raw data looks like. All right, so keep in mind that this is group data. All right, so the first thing I need to do to find the mean is that we did have a formula for that. Now you could use the formula or you could use your calculator. And so the formula for the mean was that you had to take the sum of your frequency times your class midpoint and then divide it by the sum of your frequency. That's the formula for finding the mean if you have grouped data. And that's what we have here on our frequency table. Now if we have raw data, then the formula is different. Okay, so there's one thing we're missing here, and that is x. We need to find out what x is. Now, does anybody remember what x represents? So f represents the frequency, but what is x? So as I'm drawing these straight lines here, attempting to draw the straight lines anyway, you're hopefully looking through your notes to see what that X represents. All right, so the majority of you agree on the class midpoints? Okay, good. So class midpoints, that's what we're looking at. All right, class midpoints. Okay, that was my attempt at drawing straight lines. All right, the pen doesn't want to turn on. There we go. All right, so the class midpoints, those are your X's. Okay, so then you have to remember how to get class midpoints. The class midpoints are obtained by taking the lower class limit and the upper class limit, adding it together and dividing by 2. So you have to find the lower and the upper. So here we have the lower class limit, the upper class limit, add them together and divide by 2. So the lower and the upper, add them together and divide by 2. Okay, so let's see if your answers match up to my answers. So remember what I said. You add up the upper and the lower class limits, and then you divide by 2. So this is what I have. I start off with 49.5, and then I have 149.5. And then it's 249.5. Okay, so now we start noticing a pattern. So in order to get the next class midpoint, yeah, it looks like we're just adding 100. So that's the class width here. So the class width is 100. Okay, so that makes your job easier. Once you find out what the pattern is, we can just go ahead and add 100 in this case. Makes it easier. All right, so we have the class midpoints. If you have grouped data, you need class midpoints in order to find your mean. Now, if you wanted to use the formula, I've already showed you how to use the formula. That's fine, you can do that. If you wanted to use your calculator, then that's okay too. If you use your calculator, you're going to put the class midpoints into one of the lists, and then your frequency is going to go into the other list. And so what we're going to look for is we're going to look for this command, and that's the one-var stats command. Now, in the older type of calculators, it's going to be one-var stats, and then it's L1, comma L2. So when I say L1, comma L2, it doesn't really matter which lists you use, but the first list always has to be where your class midpoints are. That is very important. Class midpoints have to go first. And then the second list, whatever that ends up being, that's where your frequency is. Okay? So, I'm going to move you over to the calculator. You're going to enter the class midpoints and the frequency. All right, so let's see if this works. All right, so you should have the calculator there. All right, so remember, it's the class midpoints and the frequency that we're paying attention to. So I'm going to go to Stat, and then I have to enter my information in here. So press Enter. I already have something on here, so I'm going to clear it. And I always forget to clear this before I go in. So as I'm doing this, clearing the lists, going up to the name of the list, pressing clear, coming back down. There's a good question that was asked. If you're using your calculator, you're just going to do the one-bar stats. You're going to just tell me what you entered. So you can do one-bar stats and then tell me what L1 and L2 are. So if you decide you're not using the formula, you want to make sure you tell me what command you used on your calculator. And then I'll show you in just a minute. But yeah, you have to make sure that you're telling me what you did. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to talk through this. I'm just going to enter my class midpoints first, and then I'm going to enter my frequencies in the second list. Okay, so there it is. That's our L1 is our first list. That has the class midpoints, and then L2 has our frequencies. So now I want to get to that one-bar stats. I'm going to go ahead and press Stat, and this time I'm selecting Calc, and there it is, one-bar stats. Now on this calculator, the information as I enter it has to go from top to bottom. So the first one is your class midpoints. So where it says list, you're going to put your class midpoints. Where it says frequency, you're going to put your frequency, which was L2. And then you go over the word calculate and press enter. Now, some of you have a calculator where you have to enter your information horizontally. So once you see one-bar stats, right after one-bar stats, you're going to enter L1, comma L2. And remember, to get L1 and L2, you have to first type in the second key, and then the number 1, the second key, and then the number 2. And the comma is right above the 7. The comma is right above the 7. So I'm going to go ahead and press enter over the word calculate. And there I have the mean, and I'll have a standard deviation if I need it. If I scroll down, I also have my 5-number summary. I have the median. So if you scroll down, there's more information there. Okay, so I am going to go back to the whiteboard. And so this is what I would write down. I used one of our stats, so I already wrote it down. And I also labeled where my frequencies were and where my class midpoints are. So if you're using your calculator, you'll at least have to show that to me, what you did on your calculator. So what I highlighted is what you would write down. And then, of course, we do have an answer. The mean, and this is for females. So the mean for females is 147. Now, how do I round this? So the question is, how do you round it, right? And so we don't have the raw data. We don't have the raw data. We just have, closest thing we have is the class limits, the lower and the upper, which are whole numbers. So yeah, it's just to one place, 147.3. Okay, now I saw a question that was being typed about the calculator. Make sure I don't miss that. All right, so you typed the information in your calculator and then you hit calc. What you do next is choose one bar stats. So you press enter again. Okay, so you need to go to one bar stats. Okay, so after, I'm going to clear this. So once your data is in there, you go to stat, you right arrow to calculate, and then it's just enter on one bar stats. So after you choose calc at the top, press enter. And make sure that L1 and L2 are as they are in my calculator, and then press enter over the word calculate. So we have females, the mean for the females is 147.3, and you would do the same thing for the males. You're going to get class midpoints, and I'm just going to give this to you, but you could do that later and verify it. So for the mean for the males, I'll put it in a different color. For that one, you should get 84.5. Remember that you're going to need your class midpoints, and then you already have your frequency. Okay? All right, so for number 2, it says estimate the median cell phone bill for each group. And it does say we're going to estimate the median cell bill for each group. Now, when we found the mean, the calculator also gave us the median. So if you wanted to just use what the calculator gave you for the median, then you can do that. That's not a problem. It's already there on your screen. So we have for females and for males. It's already on our screen. So let me go ahead. We did the one for females. So let me see where that would be at. Remember when you scroll down? So there's the mean at the top. If you scroll down, you find the median. The median is right there. All right, so 149.5. That's where our median is. Okay, so 149.5. Again, it's in the same window. You just have to scroll down. So if you have the mean, you have the median as well. You just have to look for it. Okay. Now, just remember that I actually didn't find the mean for the males. I just gave you the answer, and I want you to do it. You have to do it the same way that we found the mean for the females. The table that you're looking at is a little bit smaller, so it wouldn't be as much work. Okay, but if you do the same thing to find the mean for the males as we did to find the mean for the females, then you're going to get 84.5. Okay, now again, we didn't find the mean for the males, so then down here, I'm just going to give you the answer. Okay, so when you do find the median for males, it's 49.5, but you have to do the work. So I did not do that. You're going to actually have to find the class midpoints on your own and find out what the median is. Okay? I just gave you the mean and the median for the females. All right, so since the calculator already gives you the mean, just scroll down and the median is there. But it does say to estimate. So how would we estimate? If you just wanted to tell me which class the median was located, then you're looking let's see, how many data values do we have here? So we would have to first figure out how many data values we have. We have, for females, let me go ahead and put it over here. So the sum of your frequency is what you're looking at. The sum of your frequency is what you're looking at. So for females, it looks like we get 46. And then for males, it looks like we get 40. Okay, so we have 46 and we have 40. That's our sample size. So we're estimating the median cell phone bill for each group. So I'm only going to work with the female group. And I'll just give you the answers for the male group because it's the same. You're going to do the same process. Okay, so for the female group is 46. So if we have an even number of data values, the median is located in the middle, right? So you take the two middle values, add them together, and divide by 2. All right, so in this case, I have 46. So 46 divided by 2, well, that's the 23rd value that I'm looking at. Now, these are not actual data values. That's the position of your data. So you're going to take the 23rd, and then you're going to take the 24th. Those are the ones that are going to get averaged out. Again, I do not know what my data values are. I just know the position where the median is located. So it's in the 23rd and the 24th. Okay, look at the female group. This only goes up to the 22nd. So is the median located in the first class if that only goes up to the 22nd data value? Keep in mind that these are already ordered from the smallest to the largest. So it's not in the first class, right? Because that only goes to this 22nd. So in order to find the 23rd and the 24th, you're going to have to move to the next class. Okay, so that's going to be in the next class. All right, in order to find the 23rd and the 24th value, you have to move on to the second class. So an estimate would be that the median is located in the second class. That would be your estimate. So if you wanted to do it that way, you could as well. All right, so how you would answer the question for the male group is the same way. So for the male group, we have 40, right, and it's 40. And so you're going to divide that by 2. So 40, if you get halfway, that's 20. So you're looking at the 20th value and the 21st value. That's where the median is going to be located. So for the male group, where would the median be? Which class is it in? Good. Okay. So that's the estimate. It depends on how many data values you have. It all depends on how many data values you have. Remember that the median is located in the middle. So that's our goal, to find the median, which is located in the middle. So if it's an odd number, we have an exact middle. But if we have an even number of data values, you have to take the two middle numbers. And we do not actually know what the data values are here. We just know the position of the data value. So here is the 20th and the 21st. Here is the 23rd and the 24th. It's just the position, but we don't know what the actual data values are. And that's how you have to work around the group data. If it's group data, that's how we're going to obtain information from our group data. You should be able to find the mean. You should be able to find the median, at least estimate what the median is. And we should be able to estimate the mode. So we have group data. How would we find the mode for the first table, for the group of females? Which class would the mode be in? So I have the mode for females is in what's the class with the highest frequency, right? And I guess 22 is the highest frequency. Yep, so it's in the first class. That's the mode for females. And then the mode for males, well, that's the same thing. 31 is the highest frequency. So again, that is also in your first class. In the first class. So if you have group data, which is data in a frequency table, you should be able to find out what the measures of center are. Remember that the rules that we have for group data are different than the rules that we have for raw data. So in this case, it looks like females have a higher, the mean cell phone bill for females is much higher. You're looking at $147.30 compared to the men's mean cell phone bill, which is just $84.50. And the median for females is also much higher than the median for males. So what that tells you is that 50% of females have cell phones that are above $149.50, while only half of the men have cell phone bills that are above $49.50. So you see that there's definitely a difference between the two groups. And of course, if we looked at a box plot, we could even see what's going on more than what we're doing here. And what you typed out there, because there's a question that says for the test with just writing the mode equals the first class, yes, that is sufficient. Same mode is equals first class. That would be fine. Okay, so that is the first page, not the first page, but the first question that's on there. So on today's lecture questions that I have, this is, I'm asking you to type in what we ended up getting. All right, so let's move on to the next part. All right, so this is another way that group data can be presented to you. It could be presented to you in a histogram. Now this histogram is not complete. Look at the horizontal scale here, or the horizontal axis. It's missing some numbers. So the first thing you have to do is you have to be able to identify, you have to know what values are on the horizontal scale. So what do we call the numbers on the horizontal scales? At least the ones I gave you. What are they called? All right, so remember I said the horizontal scale. The horizontal scale. Not the vertical scale. It's the horizontal scale. Okay, a lot of different questions, or I'm sorry, a lot of different answers. Yeah, but I'm seeing class boundaries come up quite a bit. But yeah, it's so not a lot of agreement on that. But remember that the class boundaries are the numbers that separate your classes, so they have to be right at the corners right here. So these are the boundaries. They're the class boundaries. Class boundaries. Now some of you answered midpoints. If these were the class midpoints would be in the middle. They would be marked, so it would represent the middle of every class. And so what I have here does not mark the middle of every class. All right, so class boundaries. And when you say classes, classes, we don't know. Yeah, so every bar represents, like this bar is the first class, this bar is the second, that's the third class, and so on. So the bars represent the different classes, but the numbers on the scale are the class boundaries, not the classes. All right, so let's go ahead and fill what's missing because not everything is here. So there's some class boundaries that are missing. So it looks like the class width is, well, it goes from 0 to 5, right? 0, 5, 10, and then 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, and then 60, 65. Okay. So I just filled in the missing class boundaries because every other boundary was given to us, and so I just went ahead and wrote those out. But those are the boundaries. Now, to find the mean, this is information given to us in a histogram, which is group data. We are still going to need to get the information we had from before. So there's two things I need here. So if we have group data, you should be thinking about this formula because we have group data. That's the formula for finding the mean for group data. So we have a frequency, so we need to have a column for frequency, and then X represents what? What did we say X represents? All right, so you guys agree it's a class midpoint. All right, so class midpoints. Okay, so the frequency, we can just get that from the number at the top of every bar, right? So we have 22, we have 2, then we have 9 and 9, 19, 10 and 12, then we have 5, 5. Okay, so, oh, what do I put here? There's nothing there. There's no bar there. And there's no bar here either. All right, so I have 0, 1, 0, 1. Okay, so places where there are no bars, you're going to have to put 0. Now, since it's 0, remember the class midpoints gets multiplied to the frequency. So if you multiply by 0, it's going to be 0, so it's not going to change your answer. So if you did not include it on here, that would still be okay. And again, the reason is because if you take your class midpoint times the frequency, class midpoint times frequency, and if the frequency is 0, then your result is going to be 0. So it's not going to change your answer. So if you left it out, that would be okay too, if you left it out. All right, so now I have to figure out what the class midpoints are. So we have 0 and 5. So remember, the class midpoint, that's the middle of your class. That's the middle of your class. So between 0 and 5, we're looking for a class midpoint. All right, so I see 2.5 on there. Okay, good. And then again, from 5 to 10, what is in between 5 and 10? And then what's between 10 and 15? So you start seeing a pattern, right? You start seeing a pattern. So at some point you can stop, but you start seeing a pattern. And the pattern is that they're all a difference of what? Right, 5. Okay, good. All right, so then you can just continue and just make sure that you put them all with the difference of 5. Okay, so they're all not going to fit here for me. So I'm just going to put dot, 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 and you can finish that off. So it's all going to be a difference of 5. And so just like the previous problem, this right here is your class midpoint, so that would be L1. This is your frequency, so that's going to be L2. So you are going to find one var stats, L1, comma L2. Just like we did before, that's how you're going to find the mean. All right, so go ahead and work on that, and then once you have the mean, let me know what you get. All right, so the mean was 20.5. That's what everybody should have right now. And if it isn't, then make sure you go back and check how you entered your information on your calculator. So now we're going to go ahead and estimate the median. And so that depends how many, well, I have to first see how many, well, my sample size is here. How many data values do I have? That's the sum of F, which is your sample size, represented by lowercase n. Okay, so you get 95. All right, so we have 95 data values. And so it's an odd number. So when I take 95 divided by 2, that's where I'm going to find my median. That's where I'm going to find the median. So is that the first, the second? Which class is that? So let's see, 95 divided by 2, well, that's about 47.5, right? So that means we take the 48th value. All right, so we have 22, 24 up to here, right? So 22, 24, and then after 24, we have 9 more, so we're at 33. Still not there, and then we have 9 more, and we're at 42. So yeah, it would have to be the next one down. So 42, and then the next up to 61 is located in the 5th class, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, so the median is located in the 5th class. That's one way of estimating. Now, if you already found the mean, your calculator also has the median. So if you just scroll down, you will see the median. And so your option is to just tell me what the median is. I ended up getting 22.5. Or you can say that the median is in the 5th class. So you have the choice. So we know the median is the 48th value. I don't know what that median is, but I know it's the 48th value. So I just have to go and find out where the 48th value is. I have to find out where the 48th value is. So you pretty much just go ahead and count. So here you have the first 22 values, and I need to find the 48th value. So you're just counting until you get to the 48th value. And the 48th value is in the 5th class. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the reason we were looking at the 48th value is because we have 95 data values. The median is in the middle. We divide by 2. So it's an odd number. So we actually have a true middle. So that's 47.5. That rounds to 48. So then that's how we're coming up with the 48th value. Okay, how about the mode? Estimate the mode. So the mode is, let's see, how did we do it before? Here the mode was in the class with the highest frequency. So same thing, the mode is in the class with the highest frequency. So which class has the highest frequency? All right, so the first one, right, the first one is the highest. So it's in the first class. Okay, so that's what we know about the mode and the median. We estimate where they're located. So the way that we go about finding the measures of center when we have group data is different than if we had raw data. The very last page of that worksheet it gives you raw data, so you can kind of compare what you're doing. So let me jump over to the very last page. So this is the last page of that worksheet, and it gives you just a list of data values. This is the raw data. So you're asked to find the mean, the median, the mode. And so now the measures of center, we have to use the formulas for raw data. So for example, the mean, you just took all your data values, added them up, and divided by how many you have. So the mean is the sum of all your data values, and then you just divide by how many of them you have. The median, you have to organize your data from the smallest to the largest and then take the middle ones. The middle one, or maybe there's two, I don't know how many data values do we have here. Looks like there's 13, right? So then there is a middle one. So the median would be the middle data value after they've been organized. Now, that's because we have an odd number of data values, but if we had an even number, then after we organize, we take the two middle ones and average them out. We add them together and divide by 2. Okay, now if you wanted to do this on your calculator, you can just enter this into one of your lists. It doesn't matter which one. And then you're just doing a one-bar stats on that list. This time it's just one list. All right, so I'm going to take you back to the calculator, and we'll go ahead and enter those and see what we get. Okay, so I am going to clear whatever I had on here so it doesn't confuse you. And I have raw data, so I'm going to enter that. Stat is where I go. Edit. So I press enter because that's where I'm going to enter my data. And I already have information in there. Let's see, I don't think I need it anymore. I'm looking. I do not need it anymore, so I can clear it. But if you wanted to keep it there, you just want to use another list, you can just put your data in the third list. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you do a one-bar stats, you have to tell it where your data's at. Okay, so I'm just going to clear these. I went up to the name of the list, pressed clear, and then I just came back down. So go up to the name of the list, press clear, and come back down. So you're just using your arrow keys to move around. All right, so I'm not going to talk here. I'm just going to enter the data values. Okay, so assuming I didn't make a mistake, looks okay. I tried to double check it as I was entering them in. But it's always worth the extra time to go back and make sure that you've entered the numbers you've meant to enter. All right, so then I'm going to go to Stat. because I want to find that one bar stats. So I'm going to go to stat again. And then I am going to use the right arrow key to take me to calc at the very top. And there's the one bar stats. So I'm going to press enter. Okay, now remember, this time we just have one list. And so with this one list, it's just going to go, there's no frequency associated with this. It's just raw data. There's no frequency. So the list of data values is in L1. Okay, so over the word calculate, I'm going to press enter. Now the older calculators, you actually see the one bar stats. And so just right after one bar stats, just do second and then the number 1. And that's all you need. All right, so here it's flashing on the word calculate. So I'm going to press enter. And I have my mean. I have my standard deviation. If I scroll down, I'll see the 5-number summary, minimum, first quartile, second quartile, and so on. And the median is the second quartile. So I have the median as well. So I have a lot of information from just doing that one bar stats. Okay, so now I can go over here and say, okay, I know my mean is, I think what was it, 66.3846. So we have to figure out how to round this. We have to figure out how to round this. So how do you think you round this? All right, so as you're answering that question, there's another question. What symbol is variance? So variance is S squared. Our calculator doesn't give us variance. So S squared is sample variance, which our calculator doesn't give to us, right? So it does give us standard deviation. So then to find our variance, we just take the unrounded standard deviation and square it. All right, so we're all agreeing that you round to one place because your original data, they're all whole numbers, so 66.4. Good. Okay, so that's our mean, and then we have our median. So our median, you can take the numbers and organize them from the smallest to the largest. We already know there's 13 data values, so it's the middle one. But the calculator also gave us the median. If you scroll down, you see that the median is 66. Now the calculator does not give us the mode, so we're going to have to go look at the data and find out what the mode is. Now you could have the data organized, or you can have the calculator organize your data, and that way it's easier to find the mode. You can sort your data on the calculator. And I'm going to show that to you real quick right now. So although it doesn't give you the mode, you can go into your calculator and have it sorted. If you go to Stat, notice that option 2 and option 3 are sorting options. You can sort from ascending or descending. So I'm just going to go ahead and select number 2, sort ascending. Press enter. And my data is in L1, so I'm going to go ahead and select second and then the number 1. When you press enter, it says it's sorted for you. So if you go back to Stat and then Edit, there's your data and it's already sorted for you. So it might be easier to find out what the mode is. It looks like we have 260s and 261s. So let's see if there's anything else that repeats. So the mode is the data value that appears more than any other data value. So if we're looking for raw data, that's what I'm looking for. So you agree then it's 60 and 61. Okay, yeah, so we have bimodal situation here. All right, so the next thing is find a standard deviation. Now again, the calculator gave us a standard deviation, and we rounded to the 10th place because of what the raw data looks like. And so I'm just going to show you here because it looks like we had 2 standard deviations. So I don't know which one to use. So let's go back. All right, so I went to Stats, over to Calc, and then I selected the one-var stats. List was L1, and so I'm just going back and doing the one-var stats again so I could see what my results were. So that's where I have the mean, and the standard deviation is there as well. But what is this here, the little sigma x right below it? What is that? So if it's sigma, it's a Greek letter, so it must be coming from the population, right? Yeah, so that's the population standard deviation. Now, we always assume we're working with the sample standard deviation unless it says otherwise. So we do not use sigma in this case. That has to do with the population, and we're not using population. We don't have raw data from the population. So you can ignore it. We are using S. There's a little x next to it, but that's our standard deviation. That's how the calculator tells you the standard deviation. So it's 5.14. So 5.1 if I had to round it. 5.1. Okay, since we are on the screen, and I didn't ask you for variance on the worksheet, but I could on the midterm. I could ask you for variance. So I said that if you have the standard deviation to get the variance, you can just go ahead and square standard deviation. But when we went through the definitions, it was very clear. The variance is the standard deviation squared, but it's the unrounded standard deviation. That's very important. You have to make sure that you use the entire, that whole value for the standard deviation. You can't round it to find the variance. So it's 5.140338211 squared, the whole number. And that might get a little bit, I guess you could type it out. But I mean, it's a hassle to type out. So here's a shortcut. If you go to VARs, which is this button right to the left of clear, if you select VARs and then go to option number 5, so you can either press option 5 or just scroll down to it. Then you have all of the measurements from the sample. So right after you do the one-var stats, it remembers all of those measurements. And so the standard deviation is number 3. So when you press 3, it selects standard deviation. And so there it is. That's our standard deviation without us having to type it all out. So for the variance, I just have to square it. So that's the previous answer squared. So all I had to type is squared, and it just takes my previous answer and it squares it. So the variance is the unrounded standard deviation squared. Again, I didn't ask you for the variance on this document, but I could have. And so if I rounded variance, it would be 26.4. Okay, so I'll take you back to the whiteboard and we'll finish it off there. Okay, so the standard deviation, we had said it was 5.1. Now, had I asked you for variance, then it's the unrounded standard deviation squared. So we ended up with 26.4 because we'll also round our final answer. And you can try it out on your calculator. If you take the rounded standard deviation, the 5.1, if you square that, you'll see that your answer will be far away from what our variance is. So if you take 5.1 and square it, you'll see that you will not get 26.4. What do you get when you take 5.1 and square it? Okay, so you get something different, right? Got 26.01, so you get something different. It's not the same. So you remember, to get variance, you have to get the unrounded standard deviation and square that. All right, the next thing we have is our 5-number summary. So anytime you see any question having to do with the 5-number summary, let's go ahead and list it down. So we have the minimum data value. We have the first quartile. We have the median, which is the second quartile. We have the third quartile, and then we have the maximum data value. Those are the 5 measurements you're looking for. Okay, so or the 5 numbers that you're looking for. So when we did the 1-bar stats, all that information was on the calculator. So I'm going to take you back to that, and we'll write it all down. So I lost all that information, so I'm going to have to do the 1-bar stats again. Okay, so you're going to press Stat, and then you are going to right arrow to Calc. There it is, the 1-bar stats. And it's L1 is where my list 1 is. So I'm just doing the same thing we've been doing, again, so I can get that information. If you scroll down, so there's the mean that we had already written down. There's the standard deviation that's already written down. Okay, so if you scroll down, you start with the minimum. That's 60. That's the first number we need to write down. And then the first quartile, the second quartile is the median, the third quartile, and then the maximum data value. So you want to write down those 5 numbers. That's your 5-number summary. So later on, when we look at box plots, we are going to use these 5 numbers. It'll help us with our box plot. It will help us label everything in our box plot. All right, so I'm just copying these down from what I just showed you. So we have 60, 61, 66, 71, and 75. And so if you had to construct a box plot, this is what it would look like. Now, I don't know how wide the box plot is. I'm just labeling where the different numbers would be located. This would be the minimum data value. The first line here would be your first quartile. So that's 61. And then the median would be represented by the second line. So that's 66. The third quartile would be represented by the third line, which is 71. And then the last part here, that's your maximum data value. So that's how you would label them on a box plot. Okay? So the next question here is to find the IQR. So remember what we talked about the other day? So what would you do to find the IQR, the interquartile range? Okay, so yes, third quartile minus the first quartile. All right, so we have the third quartile, and we also have the first quartile, right? So the third one is 71, and the first one is 61. So right there, you know what the interquartile range is. So 71 minus 61. All right, so there's our IQR. So if I was comparing this set of data with another set of data, if I were to look at their IQRs, the data set with the larger IQR would indicate that there is more variability within those data values. So the larger IQR tells you that there's more variability, or that the data values are more variable. Okay. So I went ahead and I went back to the last problem on the worksheet because you should be able to remember what group data looks like and what raw data looks like. And so I started off today's lecture by looking at how group data can be presented to you, and then we found the measures of center. And then I went and I looked at the raw data. And for the raw data, you see how it's presented to you. And you can also find measures of center. And here we also found the standard deviation and the IQR, which are measures of variation. Okay, so let's go back then and talk about box plots. All right, so let's see how far I got to this. All right, so I did finish this histogram. I don't know why I copied it twice here. I did get 4, 5, 6, and then again this is 4, 5, 6, so somehow it was copied there twice. All right, so then right after the histogram on that worksheet I asked you to print out, we have this box plot. So this is a modified box plot. And actually meant to give you just a regular box plot. The reason for that is because on these modified box plots, you see those dots that are to the right? Those dots, it's already telling you what the outliers are. So this modified box plot is already telling you where the outliers are. So if I ask you, paying $150 for a haircut if you're female, is that an outlier? You can just look at your graph. Because it is a dot, you'd say yes. So on the midterm, when I give you a box plot, I'm not going to have a modified box plot. I'm just going to have a box plot like the one I drew over here, where there are no dots, just like this one down here. Because then when I ask you if something's an outlier, you actually have to calculate it. You actually have to do the calculation to find out if it's an outlier. All right, so that's what it would look like on the midterm. I wouldn't already tell you what the outliers are. But that's how this one printed out. All right, so this is the modified box plot. The dots already tell you where the outliers are. And I'm going to just do the problem as if I didn't know that, just so that you'd see how that works. Okay, so a couple of things you can tell from box plots. First of all, if those boxes, you see the interquartile range, we have, this is the first quartile, and then this line is the second quartile, and then this line is the third quartile. So between the first quartile and the third quartile, that's your interquartile range. So the distance within those two values measure the variation in your data set. So which has a more variable, so the data had to do with how much you spend on your haircut. So the male students were asked the same question as the female students were asked, and that's how much do you pay for a haircut, including tip. And so this is what the data looks like. So the IQR for males is much smaller than the IQR for females, because when you find the distance between the third and the first quartile, that distance for females is much larger than the distance from the third quartile to the first quartile. So the IQR is much smaller here because the distance is much smaller. The IQR is larger for females because the distance between the third and the first quartile is much larger. So the IQR would be larger for females. So one question I asked, I'm going to jump over to question number 9, and that says, which group has the most variable amount spent on the haircuts? So based on the box plots, which group do you think has the most variable amount? So that would be the one with the largest IQR, right? Okay, so the group with the largest IQR means they have the most variable. That means they're the most variable group. Okay, so you should know what's happening as far as the measure of spread by using box plots. Okay, so the box plot that has the largest distance between the third and the first quartile, that has the largest spread. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at number 7 here. Find the median amount that male students spend. The median amount. All right, so first you have to find out what measures the median. And so this line right here, that's your second quartile. And the second quartile happens to also be the median. And all we can do there is we can estimate and make it go down to the horizontal axis. So this marking right here, that is your median. Okay, so I'm going to try, so let's see how this works. I have a tool here for making straight lines. Let's see how this works. So I'm going to make a straight line all the way to the horizontal axis. Oh, didn't work. Okay, so let me try it again. There we go, I lost it. All right, so somewhere there. Okay, so that's where the median looks a little bit crooked, but that's okay. That's where the median, if you match it up to the horizontal axis, that's what it matches up to. Okay, so in between, I'd say that this would be my in between. So between 0 and 50, we have 25. So I'd say that's 25. Okay, so the median for males isn't 25 because it's not at the middle. It's not. So you guess. And Diana, you say 15? Okay, yeah, 15 might be, that'll probably be pretty good. So this one kind of looks to me like it's in between. Let's see if I can match it up. That looks like it's in between 0 and 25 to me. But again, it's just an estimate, right? So between 0 and 25. And so you have to write it down so I know what I'm looking at, okay? So some of you say 12.5, some of you say 15, so you're giving me an estimate. So I mean, you try to make it your best estimate. Now if you said 15, I don't know if my line was straighter, I'd probably be, but based on where it lands, yeah, it looks like maybe a 12.5, but even if you said 13, right? Even when you said 13. All right, so again, it's based on the fact that you start from 0 to 50, and halfway is 25. And my line looks like it's in between 0 and 25. So even if you said 13, that might be okay as well. I don't know, I think my marking is off a little bit. Let me look again. I am going to see what is the first quartile. Let's see that. I'm going to mark that over. So if you had a ruler, of course, that would make it nicer. Just stretch it down. Okay, so that's where the first quartile is, because I don't want to, the first and the quartile and the median are really close together. So the first quartile is definitely less than 13. Definitely less. Okay, so maybe you could say 12. And that one, the median is right there. Let's see if we still think that it's 13. All right, so see how now it doesn't look like it's in between because I had to adjust it. I think I had it. Yeah, so it's a little bit more, 14. might be good too. So it is an estimate. So what you need to do here is you need to write down what your estimate is, and then my answer is going to, or the way that I grade it is going to depend on what your estimate is. So here the second quartile we'll say is 14. Now unless it's really out there, unless it's far off where you're telling me the second quartile or the median is 20, it can't, there's 20 is too far away, right? Because 25 is already the middle. So I mean it has to be something that's very off. Okay, here the second quartile, that's for the other group, the female group. Let's see if I can get a different color. All right, so this might be a little easier because it's closer. All right, so that one, it's definitely larger than 25 because you see it's to the right. So that median is definitely larger. Okay, so I don't know, maybe 28, yeah, 31 would be fine. Okay, so it's just larger. So I'm going to say 27. That's good, 27, 28. Okay, we can say 27. So what we see here is that females have a larger median than the males, and that's how I present. It says find the median amount that male students spend. So that's your second quartile, which is also your median. That's $14. And then for females, that's $27. Right, so females has the larger median. And so what this is saying is that more than 50% of the female students spend, or 50% of the female students spend $27 or more on a haircut. So 50% of the female students spend $27 or more on a haircut, while 50% of males spend $14 or more on a haircut, including tip. All right, and so the last question I have here, it looks like a last question. I think there might be one. Yeah, there's one more. It doesn't appear on here. This one asks about whether we have an outlier. Now, because it's a modified box plot, 160 is right there. So yeah, you know it's an outlier, but we have to show why it's an outlier. Is spending $160 on a haircut an outlier for females? So this is how you determine whether something is an outlier. It has to be above the third quartile by 1.5 of the IQR, or below the first quartile by 1.5 of its IQR. So based on that, we have to determine whether we have an outlier. So the third quartile, this is for females. I have to figure out what my third quartile is. So I have to write it here. Okay, so this one's not too bad. Actually, that's much closer to I'm going to have to move that. There we go. That looks like the third quartile. So that's nice. It's right on 50. Okay, so the third quartile is 50 for females. And then the first quartile all right, so the first quartile, okay, looks like it's there. So that's pretty close to 25, right? Not quite 25, maybe 24. Even if you said 25, that's okay. All right, so I'll make it easy and I'll just put 25. So again, you're matching it up to the horizontal scale. Okay, so the IQR then for females is going to be the third quartile minus the first quartile. and then that gets multiplied by 1.5, and it gets added to the third quartile. So whatever that amount is, that's how we determine what's an outlier. So if 160 is larger than the value that we get here, then we're going to have it is going to be an outlier. All right, so what do we have? We have 50 minus 25, which is just 25. And then we take that 25 and multiply by 1.5, and then add it to 50. So what I get here is 87.5. So again, that's the 50 plus 1.5 of the IQR. Okay, so anything that's 8750 or higher would be considered an outlier. Or I'm sorry, anything that's higher than 8750 is considered an outlier. Anything that's higher than 8750 is an outlier. So 160 is an outlier. And that's the reason why. I didn't even have to check to the left of the first quartile because 160 is to the right, so I didn't check the left part of it. So on the midterm, you'll have to show me why something's an outlier or why it isn't. A yes or no answer on that is not going to give you any credit. You have to show me why it is or why it isn't. So in this case, it's an outlier because it's above the 8750, which is the third quartile plus 1.5 of its IQR. Okay, so I thought we had one more on here. Estimate the percentage. Okay, there we do have one more. All right, so when you're looking at a box plot divides our data into 4 parts. And you already have the 5-number summary. So from the minimum value to the first quartile, that's 25% of your data. And you continue with 25% of your data until you're done with it. So here's 25% of our data falls from the minimum to the first quartile, and 25% of our data falls from the first quartile to the median, and we have 25% of our data from our median to the third quartile, and then the last 25% from the third quartile to the maximum. Right, so again, you have from the minimum to the first, from the first to the second, from the second to the third, and from the third to the maximum. It divides our data into 4 equal parts, and it's always 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%. No matter what the box plot looks like. If the box plot is really skinny here, but not over here, that doesn't change the percentage at all. It's still 25%, 25%, 25%. Even if this extended all the way over here, it's still 25%. So the shape of the box plot doesn't determine the percentage. It's just where the 5-number summary is. Okay, so it has to be from the minimum to the first quartile, from the first to the second, from the second to the third, and from the third to the max. So when we look at question 11, it says estimate the percentage of female students who spent more than $50 on their haircut. More than $50 on their haircut. All right, so this one's more, it says more, right? More than $50 on their haircut. I'm just trying to match this up. So this is nice because it's right on 50. So I see your answers. Okay. So 25%, right? Good. So that's how we would determine. using a box plot, remember it breaks your data into 4 parts. And it's always 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%. So box plots are very important. Okay, we have one more problem, and I'm going to give you some time to work on this. And this is a 5-number summary, but it's given to you in a table from StatCrunch. That's where I got this from. We have 2 groups. We have males and females, and I asked the question about how many hours you slept the previous night, and these are the results I got. So you're going to write down the 5-number summary for males and for females. So go ahead and look at the females first. So this is what you're looking for. You're looking for the minimum, the first quartile, the second quartile, the third quartile, and the maximum. That would be the one for females. And I'm going to do it all again for males. So then for males, you're looking for the minimum, the first quartile, the second quartile, the third quartile, and then the maximum. Okay, so you're looking for that 5-number summary looking at this table. And then once you find that out, go ahead and answer the other questions. All right, so I'm going to give you some time to do that. Okay, so let me go ahead and see what you have here. So I'm going to go ahead and write down the information up here. So for females, we have 3 is our minimum value. Actually, should have used a different color. Okay, so I have 3, and then the first quartile is 6. And all right, what is the second quartile? There's no Q2. So what did you guys use? The median, because that's the second quartile. Good. All right, and the maximum is 9.5. All right, so I just copied the first, what's in the first row here. So minimum is 3. Then we have the first quartile, which is 6. The second is the median, which is 7. The third quartile is 8. And then the maximum is 9.5. Okay. All right, so down here for the minimum, for males, we have 0. Q1 was 6. Q2 is the median, and that's 7. Q3 is 8. And then the maximum is 11. All right, so it says what percentage of female students slept less than 6 hours? So we're looking at the female students. So remember, with our 5-number summary, from our minimum to our first quartile is 25%. From our first quartile to our second quartile, which is the median, that's another 25%, another 25%, and then another 25%. And the same thing with the males. Okay, so 25% from the minimum to the first quartile, 25% from the first quartile to the second, which is the median, 25% from the second quartile to the third, and then from the third to the maximum. All right, so what percentage of female students slept less than 6 hours? What did you guys get? Okay. What percentage of male students slept more than 7 hours? More than 7 hours, okay, good, 50%. And then if a female student sleeps 10 hours, is that an outlier? If a female student sleeps 10 hours, is that an outlier? Well, you have to tell me why or why not. So a lot of you say no. Okay. So 10 hours, that's towards the right because the maximum is already 9.5. So then I just have to check the third quartile plus 1.5 times the IQR. All right, so the third quartile for female students, that's 8, plus 1.5 times the IQR, which is 8 minus 6. So that's 8 minus 6 is 2. 2 times 1.5, that's our 3, right? So we end up with 11. So anything greater than 11 would be considered an outlier. And of course, 10 is not. So you'd say not an outlier. And here's your work. All right, number 15. Find the IQR for the number of hours females slept. Okay, well, IQR is just the third quartile minus the first quartile. So you want to find the IQR for both females and males. So the IQR is the same, isn't it? 2 for both? Okay. So it's the same for both. All right, so we have the same IQR. So does one group have more variable sleeping schedule? Does one group have a more variable sleeping schedule? What do you think? The IQRs are the same. So there's no difference in the variability of sleeping schedules. And again, that's because the IQR, which measures spread, it's the same. Okay, so this is another way that I can present the 5-number summary to you instead of a box plot. This is another way to look at the 5-number summary, and I can ask you the same questions I asked you when we're looking at the box plot. Notice that these questions were very similar. So here you had the information on you had the box plot, and you were able to take information from the box plot. You could get your 5-number summary from it and answer the questions. Here you have your summary statistics, and then you're pulling your 5-number summary from the table. So regardless of how it's presented, you should be able to obtain that information from either the box plot or the summary statistics. Okay, so to get credit for today's lecture, let me remind you again that you do have to go to the homework on my stat lab and do lecture 5. I just want to make sure that I did get everything. A lot of these copied twice, I just realized. Okay, that's the same thing we just looked at. Okay, so that was the last thing. All right, so I'm going to take you over to my stat lab. When you go to homework, reminding you again that you do have lectures under here. Today we're doing lecture 5. So you have to do that assignment in order to get credit for watching today's lecture. All right, and then there's 3 questions on there. And you only get 2 tries, so you shouldn't be guessing. If you're guessing, then you're not going to get a good grade. So you want to make sure that you go through the notes that we talked about. The questions are pretty easy. It's something we've already done. Okay, so I'm going to stay logged on. If you have questions or if you find that I asked you a question that we didn't go over, then you can let me know. All right, so before you log out, if you want to do the assignment, since we finished a little earlier today, and I'll be logged on if you have any questions.